Working 8 hours a day is not called slavery because modern society prefers clean language for dirty arrangements. It is called employment, productivity, discipline, being responsible. But beneath the polite vocabulary, the structure is simple. Most humans trade the majority of their waking life for permission to continue existing indoors. The genius of modern power is that it no longer needs chains. It uses rent, debt, bills, status anxiety, family pressure, and the terror of becoming irrelevant. The cage became psychological, financial, and socially approved. Old slavery owned the body directly. Modern labor rents the mind in scheduled blocks and leaves the person technically free during the exhausted remains of the day. The 8-hour workday is not only about labor, it is about containment. A tired population does not revolt. A distracted population does not think deeply. A financially dependent population does not disobey easily. Money is the modern leash because it feels neutral. Nobody has to threaten you. The landlord, the bank, the grocery store, the hospital, and the tax system create the threat together. Society teaches people to worship work because worship is cheaper than force. Religion once sanctified suffering. Capitalism professionalized it. Modern culture branded it as ambition. Most people do not work because they believe in the mission. They work because fear has been made ordinary. Fear of poverty, fear of shame, fear of losing status, fear of disappointing imaginary judges inside their own head. The disturbing part is that many people defend the system that consumes them. Humans often protect the hierarchy that wounds them because admitting exploitation would mean admitting their life was not chosen as freely as they were told. The office is not a plantation. That comparison is historically crude. But the psychological architecture is related. Extract time, normalize obedience, punish refusal, reward compliance, and call survival a personal choice. The deepest truth is this: society does not need most people fulfilled. It needs them functional. The average worker is not meant to become free. They are meant to remain useful, tired, entertained, indebted, and hopeful enough not to collapse. Modern slavery does not say, "You are owned." It says, "You are free. Now pay for everything."
And eventually, something even stranger happens. People stop asking whether they are alive in any meaningful sense at all. They only ask whether they are keeping up with rent, keeping up with inflation, keeping up with expectations, keeping up with people equally exhausted pretending they are successful. Modern society turned survival into a competition and called it civilization. And humans adapted to it so completely that many no longer recognize the symptoms of psychological captivity: the constant fatigue, the emotional numbness, the inability to sit alone in silence without reaching for stimulation, the quiet panic on Sunday evenings, the guilt that appears whenever rest lasts too long. A human being can spend decades inside this rhythm and never once encounter their own mind without interference. Because exhaustion is not just physical, it is existential. Most workers are not only tired from labor, they are tired from fragmentation. They split themselves into versions: the professional self, the socially acceptable self, the obedient self, the exhausted self, the online self, the real self, buried underneath all of them. And after enough years, many forget which one was original. That is why so many people feel empty after achieving everything they were told to want. The promotion arrives, the salary increases, the apartment improves, the status symbols accumulate. But the nervous system remains unsettled because humans were never designed to experience meaning through endless optimization. The modern world confuses stimulation with fulfillment. It floods people with goals, but starves them of presence, and this is why loneliness became epidemic during the most connected period in human history. People are surrounded constantly, messages never stop, notifications never end. Yet very few feel seen, because modern interaction rewards performance more than honesty. Humans learn to brand themselves before they learn to understand themselves. Even relationships became economic in subtle ways. People calculate desirability, social value, usefulness, status alignment. Love slowly became contaminated by market logic, not completely, but enough to make people terrified of vulnerability. Because vulnerability has no guaranteed return, and modern culture worships transactions. Even self-worth became productive. People now try to monetize hobbies, personalities, bodies, trauma, opinions, attention spans, identities, and pain itself. Nothing is allowed to simply exist. Everything must justify its economic value. And when a civilization reaches that point, humans begin experiencing themselves as machines pretending to be people. That is why so many cannot relax anymore. Rest feels dangerous to someone whose value was measured through output since childhood. Children are asked what they want to become before they understand what it means to simply be alive. A child drawing for joy is considered cute. An adult doing the same without profit is considered unproductive. This is how systems shape psychology quietly, not through violence alone, but through repetition. Humans eventually become what their environment rewards, and modern society rewards speed over reflection, confidence over wisdom, visibility over depth, consumption over contentment. The consequence is not only economic exhaustion, it is spiritual malnutrition. People have information about everything and understanding of almost nothing. They know celebrities better than themselves. They know market trends better than their own emotions. They know how to perform confidence while internally collapsing. And beneath all of this sits an uncomfortable truth many avoid confronting. A large percentage of human ambition is not driven by passion. It is driven by the fear of being insignificant. Status became emotional armor, because humans are social creatures and social rejection once meant death. That ancient fear never disappeared. Modern society industrialized it. Now millions wake up every day trying to prove they deserve visibility, trying to prove they matter, but existence was never supposed to require constant justification. A tree is not ashamed because it grows slowly. An ocean does not compare itself to another ocean. Nature does not suffer from identity crises because it does not organize life around artificial hierarchies of worth. Humans do, and so many spend their entire lives climbing structures they secretly hate because descending feels like failure. That is the real prison, not work itself. Humans have always worked, building, farming, creating, surviving. None of that is unnatural. What destroys people psychologically is the feeling that their entire existence has been reduced to economic utility. To wake up already depleted, to sell attention all day, to return home too tired to experience life fully, then repeat the cycle until aging quietly replaces possibility. And yet, despite all of this, there is something strangely resilient about human beings. Even inside systems built around pressure, people still search for meaning. They still fall in love, still laugh unexpectedly, still create music, still stare at sunsets after horrible days, still help strangers without reward, still dream privately despite public exhaustion. That matters more than most people realize, because it reveals something systems can never fully control. Human consciousness refuses to become completely mechanical. There is always a part that resists reduction. A quiet inner voice that knows life is supposed to feel deeper than consumption and survival loops. Some ignore it forever. Others hear it during moments of collapse. Burnout, heartbreak, loss, loneliness, silence. Moments when the performance finally cracks and the human underneath looks around asking, "What exactly have I been running toward?" And that question terrifies people because it dismantles illusions. Not everyone actually wants luxury. Not everyone truly desires status. Not everyone dreams of dominance. Many simply want peace without guilt, time without pressure, relationships without performance, a life that feels emotionally real instead of strategically optimized. But modern society rarely teaches humans how to recognize enough. And a person who cannot recognize enough becomes permanently controllable. Because desire without limit is the perfect economic engine. So perhaps the deepest form of freedom is not escaping work entirely. Perhaps it is escaping the psychological spell surrounding it. To stop measuring human worth through exhaustion. To stop confusing self-neglect with ambition. To stop worshiping productivity while emotional lives decay internally. And maybe maturity is realizing that a calm mind is not laziness. A quiet life is not failure. Slowing down is not weakness. Perhaps the most rebellious thing a human can do in a system addicted to acceleration is remain conscious, to notice life while living it, to protect inner peace in a world profiting from anxiety, to understand that existence is unbelievably fragile and temporary, and therefore too valuable to spend entirely performing usefulness for strangers. Because one day, every meeting, deadline, title, bill, and hierarchy disappears, and what remains is painfully simple. Whether a person actually lived or merely functioned, then the real question begins. Not how to escape society completely. That fantasy destroys people too. Humans still need structure, still need responsibility, still need struggle, still need purpose. The goal is not to run away from the world. The goal is to stop surrendering your entire identity to it. Because once a person understands the game, the danger is no longer ignorance. The danger becomes bitterness. Many people wake up psychologically, then become cynical, numb, hostile, superior, disconnected from everyone around them. That is not freedom. That is wounded awareness. Real awareness changes the way a human moves through life, quietly, deliberately, without needing to announce it. The first realization is this: your mind must become more valuable to you than your image. Most humans destroy themselves protecting appearances. They protect the illusion of success while their nervous system collapses underneath it. They protect social approval while silently hating their own lives. They protect status while losing sleep, relationships, health, and emotional stability. At some point, intelligence means recognizing that inner peace is not a luxury. It is foundational. A person with money and no peace is not successful. A person admired by everyone but unable to sit alone quietly is not free. A person constantly validated by strangers but disconnected from themselves is psychologically starving. The modern world will tempt you endlessly to abandon yourself for applause. Do not make that trade too cheaply. Learn to respect your own attention. That is one of the most important psychological skills a human can develop. Attention is life force. Whatever repeatedly captures your attention eventually shapes your identity. If your attention belongs entirely to algorithms, outrage, comparison, trends, noise, and external validation, your inner world will slowly become chaotic. A calm mind is built through selective attention, not avoidance of reality, not denial, selection. What enters your mind repeatedly becomes your emotional atmosphere. Most people guard their money more carefully than their consciousness, and then they wonder why they feel internally polluted. Another realization: money matters enormously. But psychologically unhealthy relationships with money destroy people regardless of income. Poor people suffer from lacking money. Many wealthy people suffer from fearing its disappearance. Both become psychologically imprisoned by the same thing. Money works best as a tool. The moment it becomes identity, fear enters everything, because identities must constantly defend themselves. A human who builds self-worth entirely through financial success eventually loses the ability to rest. Enough never arrives for someone trying to emotionally survive through achievement. This is why some of the most externally successful people remain internally fragile. They built impressive lives on unstable psychological foundations. Real self-respect comes from something much quieter. Keeping promises to yourself, being emotionally honest, not betraying your values for temporary social rewards, remaining dependable when nobody is watching, and learning to endure discomfort without losing dignity. Self-respect is earned internally. Status is rented externally. One survives public opinion, the other depends on it. And humans who depend completely on external approval become emotionally manipulatable. The crowd can elevate them, then psychologically destroy them. So stop asking whether everyone understands you. Most people barely understand themselves. What matters is whether your life feels truthful when the performance ends. Another important realization: do not confuse emotional numbness with strength. Modern culture often rewards coldness because emotionally disconnected people appear efficient. But humans who suppress emotion entirely eventually lose access to joy alongside pain. They become functional, but unreachable. Real strength is softer than people imagine. Real strength is remaining kind without becoming weak, remaining open without becoming naive, remaining ambitious without becoming consumed, remaining disciplined without becoming emotionally dead. Anyone can become hard after enough suffering. Not everyone can remain human afterward. And perhaps that is the deeper challenge of adulthood: to survive reality without becoming psychologically deformed by it. Protect your relationships carefully, not your networking opportunities, not your social audience, your real relationships. The people with whom silence feels safe, the people who allow you to exist without performance. Because at the end of nearly every human life, status loses emotional value rapidly, but love does not. Presence does not. Memory does not. No human being lying awake at night during difficult years is comforted by a job title alone. People are held together psychologically by connection. And yet, modern ambition often teaches humans to sacrifice the very things that make achievement emotionally meaningful. Success without emotional connection eventually feels strangely empty. Like arriving somewhere important and discovering nobody meaningful is there with you, so build carefully. Not just financially, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. Build a life your nervous system can survive. That matters more than people realize, because many individuals spend years chasing goals while their inner life quietly deteriorates beneath the surface. And eventually the body begins speaking what the mind ignored. Anxiety, burnout, insomnia, depression, emotional detachment. The body keeps records the ego tries to erase. Listen to it earlier. And finally, stop performing wisdom. Live it quietly. The internet created millions of people who know the language of healing without actually healing. The language of confidence without inner stability. The language of self-awareness without real introspection. Wisdom is not aesthetic, it changes behavior. A truly conscious person usually becomes calmer, less desperate, less reactive, less obsessed with proving superiority. Because maturity reveals something liberating. Most people are too consumed by their own fears to analyze you as deeply as you think. That realization frees enormous psychological energy. You no longer need to constantly manage perception. You no longer need universal approval. You no longer need to win every invisible competition society invents. You begin choosing peace more carefully, not because you gave up on ambition, but because you finally understand the difference between meaningful ambition and psychological addiction. Meaningful ambition expands life. Addictive ambition consumes it. One builds, the other compensates, and maybe this is the clearest way to live consciously in a broken world. Participate in society, without allowing society to fully define your worth. Earn money, without turning greed into identity. Build success, without sacrificing your inner life to maintain it. Remain informed, without becoming psychologically poisoned by constant outrage. Stay strong, without losing tenderness. Stay ambitious, without forgetting mortality, because death clarifies everything eventually. Every argument over status, every desperate attempt to appear important, every performance, every ego battle, every obsession with image, time swallows all of it, and when humans truly understand that, not intellectually but emotionally, they begin living differently, more honestly, more presently, more carefully, not perfectly, never perfectly, but consciously. And perhaps that is freedom in the modern world, not escaping responsibility, not abandoning society, not becoming emotionless, just refusing to lose your soul while participating in systems that constantly ask for it. That refusal changes everything. Because once a human being stops needing the world's permission to feel worthy, fear loses much of its power. And for the first time in a long time, they can finally breathe without feeling guilty for existing.